Welcome to It's Good to Be Smart. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Mulder. I love to learn new things, and I hope you do too, because it's good to be smart. Let me start this episode with a mysterious statement. The Earth bends until it can't anymore. That sounds a little dramatic, right? Like the planet's doing yoga and suddenly gives up? But here's the thing. That's actually exactly what's happening when an earthquake strikes. So today's question is, why does the ground suddenly shake? And how do scientists make sense of something so powerful? Before we get into the science, let me tell you something about me. I grew up in Southern California, which means I didn't just learn about earthquakes, I felt them. California is pretty famous for its earthquakes, after all. When I was in middle school, there was one morning when I was brushing my teeth getting ready for school, and suddenly I missed my teeth and brushed my nose. The ground started shaking so hard I couldn't keep my toothbrush in my mouth. From the bathroom doorway, I could see right down the hall to our kitchen, and I could see the refrigerator bouncing away from the wall. Dishes in the cupboards rattled, pictures fell off the walls, and books flopped off the bookshelves. And then, after a few seconds of shaking, everything was still. We were shaken up, literally. But here's the thing, most earthquakes I've experienced in my life are usually over quickly. A few seconds, a little nerve-wracking, but pretty short bursts of energy. But not all earthquakes are like that. In 2011, a massive earthquake struck Japan, the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. The shaking triggered a huge tsunami, causing widespread destruction and long-term challenges for communities. So, earthquakes can be quick and small, or massive and life-changing. Which brings us back to the big question. What is an earthquake, really? And here's the answer. At its core, an earthquake is the sudden release of energy in Earth's crust. But that raises another question. Where does all that energy come from? And to understand that, we need to talk about something called stress. Remember from our last episode, Plate Expectations, that Earth's surface is broken into giant pieces called tectonic plates. These massive plates are constantly moving, very slowly. How slowly? About as fast as your fingernails grow. But the thing is, they don't always move smoothly. Sometimes they get stuck. Imagine pushing a heavy couch across the floor. At first it doesn't move, so you push harder, and then suddenly, scrape, it lurches forward. That's basically what's happening underground when the Earth's plates bump up against each other. The places where rocks break and move are called faults. And along these faults, stress builds up over time as plates push, pull, or slide past each other. And you know what? The rocks actually bend slightly under all that stress. But remember, the Earth bends until it can't anymore. When the stress becomes too much, the rocks suddenly snap into a new position. That movement releases a huge amount of energy all at once, and that energy travels through the Earth as waves. That is an earthquake. When an earthquake happens, it starts underground at a point called the focus. The focus is, the focus of the energy that's released when those crust plates suddenly give way. Directly above the focus on Earth's surface is the epicenter. That's usually where the shaking feels strongest, because it's the point on the surface closest to where that massive burst of energy was released. Think of it like dropping a rock into a pond. The splash happens at one point, and ripples spread outward. Except in this case, the ripples are shaking the ground beneath your feet. Now, when you hear about earthquakes on the news, you'll often hear numbers like 6.5 or 7.8. That's the magnitude, a measure of how much energy was released. Scientists often use something like the Richter scale, or a more modern version, to calculate this. But there's another important idea: intensity. While the magnitude is how much energy the earthquake releases overall, the intensity is how strong it feels in a specific place. Because an earthquake can feel very different depending where you are. If you're close to the epicenter, it might feel like the ground is trying to win a dance battle. But if you're far away, maybe just a gentle wobble. The intensity of the quake varies depending how near or far you are from the focus, even though the magnitude is the same. Okay, so magnitude is the amount of energy the earthquake releases, and intensity is how strong it feels to you depending on where you're located. But how do scientists actually detect and measure earthquakes? Remember that scientists who study the Earth are called geologists. When a geologist wants to learn something about an earthquake, they have useful tools at their disposal. They use instruments called seismographs. A seismograph records the vibrations from the ground. When an earthquake happens, it creates a jagged line on the graph called a seismogram. The bigger the wiggles on the graph, the stronger the shaking. Just little ripples on the graph, smaller intensity for sure. But here's the really cool part. By comparing data from multiple seismographs around the world, geologists can pinpoint the specific location of the earthquake's epicenter. They can judge the intensity of the shaking at different points, and where they see stronger shakes, they can start to figure out where the epicenter is located. It's like a global detective network, tracking down exactly where Earth decided to crack under pressure. You could say they're really good at getting to the root of the problem, or should I say, the fault of the problem. Yep, bad puns are back. Now you might be wondering, could there be an earthquake where I live? That's a great question. Here's the thing, earthquakes don't just happen randomly. Earthquakes almost always occur along plate boundaries, on those borders where tectonic plates interact. That's why places like California, Japan, and parts of South America experience more earthquakes than other regions. Those areas are like the seams on a baseball, where everything's connected, and also where things are most likely to split apart. The edges of plates where they are rubbing up against each other are the spots most likely for a shakeup, literally. As the tectonic plates bump together or grind past each other, or even dive under one another, that's where you're going to find earthquakes most likely to show up. Okay, quick but important question. If an earthquake happens, what should you do? The key advice is simple. Drop, cover, and hold on. What does that mean? First, drop to the ground. Then, cover your head and get under something sturdy like a desk or table. Then, hold on until the shaking stops. The big idea? Protect your head and stay put until it's safe. Earthquakes remind us that Earth is not a still, unchanging place. It's active, dynamic, always moving. Even when it feels solid beneath your feet, there are powerful forces at work below the surface. And sometimes those forces break through. So let's come back to where we started. The Earth bends until it can't anymore. Earthquakes happen because stress builds up along faults in Earth's crust, and when that stress is suddenly released, the ground shakes as energy moves through the planet. Scientists study these events using tools like seismographs, helping us understand where earthquakes happen, how strong they are, and how we can stay safe. And while earthquakes might seem scary, they're also a powerful reminder that we live on a planet that's constantly changing, shaping the world we see every day. Speaking of shaping the world, be sure to join me for the next episode where we'll turn up the heat and explore volcanoes, where things go from shaky to explosive. Thanks for joining me for this episode, and nice work leveling up your brain power today. Remember, smart isn't something you are, it's something we become as we're learning. So keep listening, keep learning, and keep getting smarter every day. It's Good to Be Smart is created and produced by me, Dr. Dave Mulder, with the support of the National Science Foundation through the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. Subscribe to this feed so you'll never miss an episode, and check out our home on the web, goodtobesmart.com. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay curious, and keep learning, because it's good to be smart.